The city of New York is known for its boundless energy, its neon-lit streets that never sleep, and an underlying sense of unpredictability that keeps everyone on edge. But on a specific night in early June, the atmosphere outside the historic Beacon Theater was shifted into something entirely different, something almost electric and heavy with anticipation. It was an evening where ordinary reality seemed to bend, drawing in a massive crowd of people who looked as though they were harboring a beautiful, dark secret. If you happened to walk past Broadway that night, you would have felt a strange, magnetic pull emanating from the grand venue, a vibration that signaled something monumental was about to unfold inside its walls. This was not just another standard gathering of casual entertainment seekers or a routine premiere event. Instead, it was a rare, once-in-a-lifetime convergence of a deeply dedicated community, a collective of passionate enthusiasts who have long found solace in the shadowy, romantic, and profoundly complex world of modern Gothic storytelling. They had traveled from different corners of the country, driven by a shared devotion to a narrative that has captivated audiences by completely redefining ancient myths for a contemporary era. Before we dive deep into the extraordinary occurrences of this unforgettable night and uncover what transpired on that legendary stage, take a quick moment to hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications, and join our growing community so you never miss our exclusive deep dives into the absolute best of television and pop culture history. To truly understand the intense magic that filled the air at the Beacon Theater, one must first look back at the incredible journey of a television masterpiece that has quietly, yet forcefully, conquered the hearts of critics and viewers alike. AMC's brilliant adaptation of Anne Rice's iconic literary universe has been widely recognized as one of the most criminally underrated series on modern television, a show that masterfully balances immense emotional weight with breathtaking cinematic beauty. For 2 spectacular seasons, this captivating production invited us into the dimly lit, blood-soaked streets of historic New Orleans, guiding us through a labyrinth of memory, regret, and immortal longing. It was a story primarily viewed through the melancholic and deeply philosophical lens of Louis de Pointe-du-Lac, a character brought to life with heartbreaking perfection and profound nuance by the immensely talented Jacob Anderson. Through his eyes, audiences experienced the agonizing weight of eternal life, the devastating loss of humanity, and the toxic, inescapable bonds of a love that transcends death itself. That initial exploration of immortality was slow, poetic, and steeped in a rich literary atmosphere that forced viewers to confront the deeply tragic nature of the vampire mythos. It established a television legacy that felt both fiercely loyal to its source material and incredibly revolutionary in its execution, creating a dedicated fandom that hung on every single whispered word and every dramatic, shadow-drenched frame. However, the nature of storytelling is inherently unstable, especially when dealing with immortals who possess their own distinct versions of history. Just when audiences thought they had grasped the definitive truth of this tragic saga, the entire narrative architecture was completely upended, setting the stage for a dramatic shift in perspective that no one could have fully anticipated. The conclusion of the second season left viewers standing on a precipice, realizing that the story they had grown to love was merely one side of a multifaceted coin. Enter the enigmatic, delightfully chaotic, and fiercely proud figure who has haunted the edges of the narrative since its very inception. This new chapter promises an entirely fresh, unapologetic perspective, shifting the spotlight directly onto the legendary figure who refuses to be silenced or misrepresented any longer. We are moving away from the quiet, brooding introspection of the past and stepping directly into a world governed by theatrical grandeur, vanity, and an unyielding desire for personal vindication. It is a transition that marks the arrival of a completely different energy, one that promises to tear down the established boundaries of the story and replace them with a vibrant, chaotic, and dangerously seductive reality that reflects the true, untamed spirit of its new protagonist. The anticipation surrounding this shift has been building for months, fueled by a collective hunger to see how this beloved universe will transform when viewed through a radically different lens. Fans have spent countless hours dissecting every frame, analyzing every line of dialogue, and speculating on how the legendary Brat Prince will reclaim his narrative from those who sought to define him. The atmosphere inside the Beacon Theater was a direct reflection of this collective obsession, a physical manifestation of a fandom that has invested its heart and soul into the preservation and celebration of these immortal characters. As the audience filled the grand auditorium, shifting restlessly in their seats and whispering in eager anticipation, there was a profound sense that everyone present was about to witness a historic turning point. They were not just spectators at a promotional event, they were active participants in a grand cultural ritual, a celebration of a literary legacy that has found a vibrant new lease on life in the modern digital age. The air was thick with a shared understanding, an unspoken agreement that the boundaries between fiction and reality were about to become beautifully, thrillingly blurred this upcoming television season. Appropriately titled after the very individual who inspires such fierce devotion, represents a bold and risky artistic gamble. It is a creative choice that demands a complete restructuring of tone, a willingness to exchange the safe, familiar comforts of established melodrama for a wild, unpredictable ride through the excess of modern celebrity culture. The premise itself is wonderfully audacious, born from a place of pure, unadulterated spite and a refusal to let an ex-lover have the final, definitive word in print. It sets up a fascinating conflict of perspectives, a battle of memoirs played out on a grand international stage, where the ultimate weapon is not a wooden stake or a silver blade, but the irresistible power of performance and the seductive allure of rock and roll. This is the intriguing backdrop that drew hundreds of eager fans to New York City, creating a vibrant ecosystem of shared excitement and mutual appreciation that made the venue feel less like a traditional theater and more like a sacred sanctuary for the beautifully unwell. As we prepare to explore the specific details of what occurred when the house lights finally went down, it becomes increasingly clear that this night was destined to go down in fandom history as the moment a literary legend truly stepped out of the shadows and into the blinding light of the real world. The palpable electricity that filled the grand auditorium of the historic Beacon Theater was a phenomenon that could only be accurately described with a single potent word, and that word was feral. It was an environment charged with an almost dangerous level of collective enthusiasm, where the traditional barriers between the audience and the entertainment completely dissolved into a shared state of pure euphoria. The sheer magnitude of this devotion became blindingly obvious before the main event even officially commenced. The simple act of prominent cast members walking down the aisles to locate their assigned seats triggered an absolute uproar throughout the massive crowd. When the legendary Eric Bogosian, who portrays the cynical and sharp-tongued journalist Daniel Malloy with such brilliant grit, stepped into the auditorium, waves of thunderous cheers echoed off the walls. This ecstatic eruption of applause was repeated with equal fervor when Asad Zaman, the actor who brings the ancient, calculating, and deeply complex vampire Armand to life, made his way through the venue. The presence of these artists served as a powerful reminder of the incredible talent that has elevated this adaptation into a modern television masterpiece. And the fans in attendance made sure their profound appreciation was felt in the most vocal way possible before the highly anticipated live performance could begin. The gathered crowd was treated to an exclusive advanced screening of the upcoming season premiere episode, an experience that proved to be an absolute roller coaster ride of raw emotion, high stakes, and stunning visual artistry. As the lights dimmed and the massive screen flickered to life, the entire theater became a unified entity, responding to every single frame with an intensity that was nothing short of breathtaking. The audience was already losing their minds within the opening minutes, completely swept up in the gorgeous cinematography and the sharp, poetic writing that has become the absolute hallmark of this spectacular production. Every single time a beloved character made an appearance on the screen, a massive wave of collective whoops, cheers, and emotional gasps broke out across the auditorium. Seeing the brooding, magnetic presence of Louis de Pointe-du-Lac once again sent shockwaves of excitement through the crowd, while the sudden on-screen appearance of the enigmatic Armand caused an equally intense reaction. It was an incredibly moving experience to watch one of the finest and most innovative television shows of recent years while completely surrounded by thousands of passionate people who felt the exact same deep, emotional connection to the material. As the thrilling premiere episode reached its climax and the credits began to roll across the screen, the atmosphere inside the Beacon Theater reached a fever pitch, transitioning from a state of cinematic awe into an environment of pure, unadulterated rock concert energy. The massive projection screen slowly began to lift toward the ceiling, revealing a dimly lit stage where a full live band stood waiting in the shadows. They were poised and ready to facilitate the highly anticipated, real-life musical debut of the infamous Brat Prince himself. Now, it is completely understandable that some skeptics and non-believers might argue that what occurred next was simply an incredibly talented Australian actor named Sam Reid delivering yet another exceptionally committed theatrical performance, embodying the physical traits of Anne Rice's most iconic vampire creation for a clever promotional event. But for anyone who was actually sitting in that room, experiencing the sheer gravity of his presence, such rationalizations felt completely inadequate. To put it quite simply, we know exactly what we saw with our own eyes that night, and that was not merely an actor executing a well-rehearsed routine, that was the living, breathing, magnificent manifestation of the vampire Lestat. From the very second he emerged from the darkness and stepped into the blinding spotlight, he completely commanded the entire room with an unmatched, predatory grace that was absolutely mesmerizing to behold. He possessed a dangerous, rock god-worthy energy that felt deeply authentic, moving across the grand stage with a calculated fluidness that perfectly matched the chaotic spirit of the character. The attention to detail in his physical presentation was staggering, right down to the deliberate visibility of the jagged, historic scars covering his chest, a visual detail that sent the dedicated fandom into an absolute frenzy. His performance was an absolute masterclass in theatrical excess and high-concept showmanship, complete with multiple dramatic costume changes that reflected his chameleonic nature and a series of wonderfully sassy, provocative dance moves that kept every single eye locked onto his form. The musical set was interjected with moments of pure, unscripted character brilliance, including a partially incoherent, delightfully petty on-stage rant directed at a certain brooding ex-lover who had the audacity to write a best-selling book filled with unflattering descriptions. It was an absolute spectacle that delivered everything the gathered crowd could have possibly hoped for, and so much more. Cementing the reality of this spectacular new creative era, once the breathtaking performance concluded and the deafening cheers finally began to subside, the evening transitioned into a rare opportunity to peel back the layers of this ambitious production. There was an exclusive chance to sit down and ask the brilliant creator, writer, and showrunner of the series, Rolin Jones, a few burning questions regarding the immense creative challenges of adapting Anne Rice's legendary Vampire Chronicles for a modern viewing audience. One of the absolute most admirable aspects of this specific television series is its unique ability to remain profoundly true to the underlying spirit, emotional core, and philosophical depth of the original novels, even while boldly altering major character backgrounds and significantly shifting the historical timeline. These creative changes have not been minor adjustments. They have been massive, foundational reinterpretations that completely transformed the narrative landscape. For instance, the show added an extraordinary layer of historical depth, social meaning, and complex internal conflict when it chose to alter the character of Louis from an 18th-century white slave owner into a wealthy black man navigating the complicated racial dynamics of early 20th-century New Orleans. Furthermore, the deliberate choice to make the intense romantic relationships between these vampires explicitly, undeniably, and beautifully queer transformed the heavy romantic subtext that passionate fans had spent decades reading between the lines into undeniable, celebrated canon for the television series. When asked about his specific creative approach to handling this legendary, highly scrutinized source material, Rolin Jones offered a fascinating glimpse into the inner workings of his talented writer's room. He explained that during the development of the first 2 seasons, the creative team constantly tried to imagine that Anne Rice herself was sitting directly at the table with them, actively tasked with the monumental challenge of converting her sprawling, dense Gothic novels into a highly structured, serialized television show. Whenever the writers found themselves creatively lost or struggling to figure out how to navigate a particularly difficult narrative block, they would collectively pause and ask themselves what Anne, the brilliant author writing from her specific perspective in the year 1973, would choose to do at that exact creative crossroads. This unique guiding philosophy allowed the production to maintain a profound sense of literary integrity, ensuring that every single narrative departure still felt deeply connected to the grand artistic vision of the original author. Respecting the foundation she spent a lifetime building, however, transitioning from the tragic, memory-laden prose of the initial story to the wild, boastful pages of the second novel posed an entirely different set of creative challenges for the writing staff. This second book was published 11 long years after Rice's groundbreaking debut novel, and the overall narrative tone is drastically, intentionally different, trading quiet remorse for loud, aggressive vanity. In order to successfully bridge this massive stylistic gap for television, Rolin Jones revealed a brilliant adjustment to their writing process. For this upcoming season, the writers officially added another invisible chair to their conference table, and this chair was reserved specifically for Lestat himself. The creative team would constantly force themselves to imagine Lestat sitting directly in front of a television screen, watching the very season they were currently in the process of writing. Whenever the writers came up with a plot point or a dialogue sequence where they imagined Lestat would yawn, roll his eyes, or get up to use the restroom out of sheer boredom, they knew they had failed his character. Throwing out the script and forcing themselves to start the entire process over again to maintain his spectacular, demanding standard. Even though the legendary Brat Prince officially secured a metaphorical seat at the creative table during the development of this wildly ambitious season, the brilliant showrunner Rolin Jones remains absolutely clear about one foundational truth that governs the entire production. And that is the undeniable reality that Anne Rice's original books are still the absolute bedrock for every single creative choice the writers make. There is a decidedly different, vastly more chaotic, and intensely vibrant vampire narrating the story in Anne's second vampire novel, and you can actively feel that distinct tonal shift on every single page turned. The dedicated creative team who make this spectacular show continue to abide strictly by the core idea of following the detailed map that Anne originally laid out for them decades ago. Rolin Jones joked with a serious undertone that if they ever dared to deviate too far from that sacred literary map, they would quickly find themselves metaphorically buried alive in a shallow grave with her notoriously passionate fans tap dancing directly above them. This deep respect for the source material ensures that despite the modern flair, the soul of the narrative remains beautifully intact. Another massive, incredibly complex challenge in adapting this specific portion of the sprawling saga is the radical, intentional change in the historical timeline. While Anne Rice's version of Lestat famously went on his spectacular musical tour in the midst of the neon-soaked glam rock era of the 1980s, the television show's iteration of the character is hitting the open road in the extremely online, hyper-connected, and digitally saturated year of 2025. Rolin Jones openly admitted that the writing staff was both deeply daunted and incredibly excited by the prospect of recontextualizing a classic novel that was originally set in and absolutely oozing with the distinct sensibilities of the 1980s for a modern contemporary audience. The grand creative goal was to try and execute this new season as confidently in this current era where raw feelings and instant internet reactions are absolutely everything, as the original novel did in a time defined by a portable cassette Walkman and a solid pair of neon leg warmers. This modernization allows the story to comment directly on the nature of modern internet celebrity, virality, and the frantic pace of the digital age, making Lestat's quest for global attention feel incredibly urgent and deeply relevant to our current cultural moment, naturally given the immense depth of the source material and the clever nature of the adaptation. It was absolutely essential to ask whether this upcoming season will feature even more hidden secrets and deliberate Easter eggs from the books for the hardcore fans to uncover. Rolin Jones mused thoughtfully on the subject, questioning whether there is a deeper, more profound sense of personal enjoyment if a viewer comes into the show already knowing the intricate details of the original novels. He firmly believes that there is, and he openly confessed that the writers have a tremendous amount of fun playing around with the structure of the novels in that exact specific way. However, he also acknowledged that for those viewers who have not had the chance to read the books yet, there will probably be a few moments where they find themselves scratching their heads and wondering what on earth a certain bizarre detail is about. But this is entirely intentional, as Rolin Jones proudly explained that the production team is also working hard in the grand business of getting more people to read Anne Rice's incredible work. Therefore, the creative team continues to deliberately weaponize their hidden Easter eggs for the greater good, using the television show as a powerful tool to drive more folks back into local bookstores and public libraries to discover the original Jack for themselves, ultimately. This incredible event at the historic Beacon Theater proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that the legacy of these immortal characters is in the absolute safest possible hands. managed by creators who understand that the core of Gothic fiction lies in its willingness to be bold, emotional, and unapologetically dramatic. As the evening drew to a close, the brilliant showrunner issued a direct, heartfelt, and beautifully chaotic rallying cry to the entire global fandom, encouraging them to keep spreading the word about this masterpiece. He urged the beautifully unwell community of dedicated fans to continue to enthusiastically annoy their friends, coworkers, and family members about the series, stating that these unsuspecting people only need to be gently, or forcefully, pulled into the glorious darkness of this universe, declaring that the fans' mission to promote the show is completely righteous. It is a call to arms that highlights the unique bond between the creators of this series and the passionate audience that keeps it alive. A reminder that word-of-mouth support is the lifeblood of groundbreaking television for anyone who was lucky enough to witness the magnificent spectacle in New York City, or for those who have simply been watching this grand story unfold from the comfort of their own living rooms. Silencing our enthusiasm is absolutely not an option. I, for one, will absolutely not be shutting up about the incredible brilliance of this show to anyone who will listen to me, and I will be firmly, eagerly seated for the arrival of new episodes of this spectacular adaptation when they air on Sunday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern and Pacific Time on the AMC network and the AMC Plus streaming platform. The journey of these complex, beautiful, and dangerous characters is far from over, and as we transition into this wild new era dominated by the roaring guitars and fierce vanity of the legendary Brat Prince, the narrative promises to scale heights of theatrical genius that television rarely ever attempts. It is an invitation to step away from the mundane realities of the everyday world and lose oneself completely in a rich, dark, and beautifully queer mythology that honors its past while fiercely conquering the future. This extraordinary television phenomenon serves as a powerful testament to the enduring brilliance of Anne Rice's creative vision, proving that her unique exploration of the human condition through the monster mythos is completely timeless. By shifting the perspective to a character who demands to be seen in all his flawed, magnificent glory, the series is positioning itself to deliver a season of unparalleled entertainment that will undoubtedly leave an indelible mark on pop culture history. The incredible dedication of the cast, the brilliant foresight of the showrunning team, and the unyielding passion of the global fan base have converged to create a perfect storm of artistic success. As we prepare to embark on this wild, unpredictable ride through the digital landscape of modern rock stardom with the world's most charismatic vampire, one thing is absolutely certain. The world will never look at the legend of Lestat the same way again, and the beautiful darkness has only just begun to reveal its truest, most captivating secrets. Now the conversation officially turns to you, our dedicated viewers. Have you ever dived deep into the legendary literary pages of Anne Rice's classic books, like the groundbreaking Interview with the Vampire or the wildly chaotic pages of The Vampire Lestat? We want to know exactly what you think about this bold, spectacular new television adaptation, so be sure to leave your thoughts, theories, and excitement down in the comments below. And let us know if you are ready to follow the Brat Prince into the light.